Congresswoman, thank you for joining us. We just can't believe how much our government lies to us and how much the true insurrectionists and the true seditious conspirators were the ones in the meeting in December the 15th at the White House, 2017, with Barack Obama and Joe Biden, when they said, start spying on Trump. Remarkable. And we haven't yet gotten to the bottom of it.
I mean, I'm not surprised. You know, when I first got into office, remember, we told them that we wanted to really see what evidence was coming out of the January 6th committee. We find out later that all of those documents, as well as some of the transcripts, even electronic devices, has gone missing and or destroyed. I want to just also personally note that I am having my office reach out to the chairman of House Intelligence, Turner, to see if they have any more information on that binder. But this has been something that when you really shine a light on it, you know, previous to 2016, we didn't have the media that we have now with social media and really using X platform to share that information. So there's this consolidated power that really existed in Washington. So the American people would be told one thing on the news when really in reality, something else was happening behind closed doors. But because of this transparency, we're seeing that this is really changing. And that's why you're seeing so much of this information really hit the American people, but also why we were able to, from a legislative perspective, conduct and really expose some of the things that we've been exposing.
Why would any sane member of Congress ever fund these agencies ever again after looking at the evidence here?
You know, I think that there's a lot of people that want to just get back to the way that things were done in regards to the quote unquote institution. But what I can tell you is when you see things come up like FISA reauthorization and you see that judiciary was fighting with House Intelligence saying, you know, just the bare minimums we need is to have something like a warrant. You know, you can't just illegally surveillance and spy on the American people. And then you see the pushback that exists. I think not only does it show that there is an ideology change in the conference in regards to what the Republican Party will stand for and what it's becoming, which is increasingly more America first, more of that Trumpism, almost populism vibe versus how things were conducted in the past. And I think that it's important for people to know. So when we have these discussions and these debates, you're actually seeing people say, hey, I don't want my representative to vote for that. They call the offices and people might not think that that works, but it does.
Yeah, it is truly effective. And you were finally able to impeach Mayorkas, for instance, because of tactics like this, right? Congratulations.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I wanted the American people to know, and I have been trying to use my social media to update people. You know, sometimes there's parliamentary procedures that occur to where we can keep these bills alive. But, you know, I told people last week we had the votes. We are short by one. Remember, we have the smallest majority in Congress since the early 1900s, especially with George Santos being removed and now obviously losing that special election and then another member leaving. So, you know, it's important that we conduct those whip checks, which is counting the votes prior. But again, you saw that Steve Scalise came back and we were able to impeach him.
So we're really excited about this tweet that you sent out this morning, talking about pigs flying before more money will go to Ukraine. The Ukraine operation is clearly something that is being run to enrich our elites and also, of course, to give unaccountable mountains of cash to some of the most evil people on earth, people that ban the Christian church, people that kill American journalists. Why would we ever reward the goons and goblins that do such horrible acts? Like, why would we give them $100 billion more?
I've been questioning that since I got here. And, you know, Benny, when I first got here and said that I wasn't for Ukraine funding, you would swear that I had, you know, 10 heads and I was the boogeyman. These people kind of looked at me like I was the crazy freshman from Florida. But what we are increasingly seeing is Ukraine fatigue, because the fact is that for the delegations that have gone there, like myself, for example, and I think I told you this in a personal conversation, but I was on a delegation to Poland. I met with the Ukrainian parliament. I met with the speaker of the Ukrainian parliament, and they told me not only did they demand F-35s, which, first of all, Ukraine's not a member of NATO, okay? But secondly, they were saying that they were going to take all of the equipment that we were giving them, I'm talking about small arms, the Abrams battle tanks, all of that, and create a private mercenary army similar to the Wagner Group. Okay, the Wagner Group is not a good thing, right? They're basically an assassin squad, and that's something that, you know, NATO countries and the U.S. tax dollars should be going towards, not to mention that we're also funding Ukrainian pensions right now when we can't even get our own homeless veterans off the streets and we have an open border. So I do think that it's not a surprise to me that this is happening, especially being that, you know, members of the Ukrainian government, I'm sure, knew about what was happening at Burisma and about the public corruption that we're finding that Biden really was responsible for, you know, personally enriching his family off of.
Do you believe that there's blackmail going on where Zelensky has this information and this evidence of the American elites and their families, Romney, Biden's, the Clintons, using Ukraine as a money pot, and that he is blackmailing that information and holding it over the heads of some of our American elites and saying you'll fund me?
I don't necessarily know that it's blackmail that's being hidden, because to my knowledge, when the FBI handed us a redacted document, and then we later on found out that, they had sources that were alleging that there's going to be 10% for the big guy. And the reason why Hunter Biden was being paid was for protection from his then father, who's the vice president, aka Joe Biden. I think that that's kind of public knowledge. I wouldn't necessarily know that it's blackmail, but what I will say is that they definitely anticipated that the old guard of what the Uniparty was in Washington, which was the pro-war caucus, would probably fund this, never-ending war. And I would basically think that maybe they thought it was going to be the next Vietnam, right? We were just going to continue to shell money. But what you're seeing now is there has been a turnover, and there's a lot of members that are stepping down and or leaving office this cycle. I mean, I think that it's probably a very large number. I don't think that it's normal to have that many people leaving. I think it's because they don't want to deal with the fighting up here. But what I will tell you is that there's some great candidates around the country running, and hopefully if we get those people elected, we can stop it. And to Mike Johnson's credit, we are not going to be voting on more funding for Ukraine.
That's awesome. So that's not going to happen. He's not going to.
Yeah, to my knowledge, he's not budging on it. Yeah.
I hope that there's a vote on your bill mandating frontline duty in Ukraine for members of Congress supporting Schumer's $60 billion proposal. This is like one of the best written pieces of legislation because it really does seem like the decisions that are made in Washington they affect all the rest of us, and they never affect the people that are voting for them. That's a real bad thing. And I think this would really make it stick, Congresswoman.
I agree. Benny, I actually had not even introduced this bill yet, and it went out on something called a listserv to get other members of Congress to sign off on. And someone actually leaked it to the Daily Mail in, I guess, an attempt to screw me over. And it clearly didn't work. And I'm not going to make an apology for this. The fact is that these people some of them have never served. Some of them don't have family in the service, and yet they will advocate for our troops, our sons and daughters, to go and fight these wars that really we shouldn't have anything to do with, especially right now with what's happening in our country with the deficit. And really, I get ticked off because, to my knowledge, I don't see any calls for peace. We should be out there brokering peace talks, not war talks. And it's interesting, I'm going to be co-sponsoring some legislation that just came out where I think members of Congress shouldn't be allowed to trade stocks in war profiteering companies.
These are like such broad scale approved ideas. Right? Like, it is amazing. Like, I have no doubt that like younger leftists would probably vote for you because they're like, yeah, we shouldn't have corruption in government, and people that vote for war should have to send their own kids to fight those wars. They should be in the front lines, right? No fortunate son right here.
Exactly.
And it really does seem like what's being created here is a new populist movement. And I just want to get your thoughts on that. In closing, you're having a massive growth. My producer really wants me to touch on this. You've passed hundreds of thousands of followers on your social media. You are a rising star. It seems like these populist ideas are bringing in an entirely different new wing into the party, and are very, very populism is popular.
I agree with that. And I think that having a lens and perspective of, I'm a representative, I'm not up here, acting like I'm in the King's court. And I think just having that common sense approach and really listening to what your constituents want makes a difference. Benny, I think I've told you this, but I don't want to be up here forever. I think that it's actually toxic to be up here for so long because you really lose sight of what you're fighting for. But I think the more new people we can get elected to office, and the more people that are outside of this Washington bubble, I think that that's better for the country. And so I'll just leave on a positive note. When I first got up here, you saw they tried to really take me out in the media. You saw what happened with the Washington Post. Later on, it was investigated. Time Magazine made me one of the top 100 most influential people in the world. And I think that as far as that's concerned, if you tell the truth, if you're really fighting for what you believe in, I think you can really change the country. And so that's what we're here doing.
God's doing an incredible work in you, and Godspeed to you. We are praying for you, and you got the Benny Brigade at your back.
Thank you, Benny.